This is a testing time for my ancient family. At least, I think I am entitled now to call it my family now, as I have been married to my husband, James Burrows, I call him Jamie, for 11 years now. Jamie owns a shipping business and is also a minor landowner with his holdings in Culross, an old Scottish port, situated on the Firth of Forth, about a day's journey west of Edinburgh using boat and saddle, or 2 hours' ride to Dunfermline. Just a few days before Jamie and I were married, his mother Mary took me aside one afternoon, supposedly to tell me about the family. At least it started that way. She told me it was over 400 years since Jamie's ancestor Jean Boudreau came from France. She admitted the name had been changed mostly for convenience to the less exotic-looking Burrows. However, the Burrows family is now probably as Scottish as most, with the many marriages of its men and women into the local Scottish population over the centuries. This was the case for me. My maiden name was Isabel Drummond, and my father was from an old established farming family in the Dunfermline area. I had actually met Jamie in town when my parents took me there to arrange some business. Jamie was in town for some business too, and we were introduced at a small social gathering. We found a very mutual attraction, began courting, and I was over the moon when he asked for my hand. There have also been more than a few marriages with English girls as well, in the past, if Mary's old family tales were to be believed. It was then as if she was sounding me out about my attitudes and opinions on politics and family and religion. I had been wondering if she wanted to know when I would produce her first grandchild. Then, soon after Jamie and I were married, Mary took me aside again and told me even more about the family. We all lived in the same big house. I was apprehensive at first, but Jamie and I had our own wing where we were reasonably private. We ate together when necessary, but not always. Isabel, you're now a full part of the family, and forgive me, lassie, when we had that talk a week or so ago, I wanted to check on you. I like you. And you'll be a good wife to my laddie, so I want to tell you a wee bit more about the Burrows. There's a kind of, let me say, special knowledge that has been passed down in this family through the generations. We try to do it through the female line, but sometimes that doesn't work. I only had boys, that's Jamie and his brothers Sandy and Patrick. It's the stuff that's in this little book I've got here. She patted a small bag. When they get married, I'll maybe give their wives a copy of the information as well, but I'll have to know they're trustworthy. I've watched you, lassie, and I think you're canny enough. It looked like I had passed whatever vetting processes she had used. She was shrewd and careful enough herself, and strong-minded, but she and I got on well together. This is what I'll pass on to you. But you'll have a look at it first. She opened a cloth bag and handed me a little book. It was nothing much at all, just the size of my hand, with some paper or parchment pages in a kind of thin yellow leather cover. It was worn-looking and badly stained with mildew. This is an old copy and it's showing its age. I could have made you a new one, but some of the things I need to make a new one are not so available now. Let me open it up and see what you think, Isabel. She opened it at a page and passed it to me. Can you read this? I peered at it. The writing looked like an old style. I can read the left-hand pages. To heal a cut, I think it says. The words are in English. Near enough Scots I can understand. Aye, that's right. Now what about the facing page? I tried to read the words, but they were totally unfamiliar. It's not Scots, or English, and I know a wee bit of French and Latin, and it's not any of these. What is it? Give me it back, lassie. She put the little book back in a cloth bag. You see, away back, 400 years ago, when Jean Boudreau came from France, he, or maybe it was his wife, had a copy of this very book. Now, Isabel, what I tell you must be the strongest family secret. It's a wonderful book, but it could be dangerous for the family to have it. You must never tell any outsider about it. I got it from my mother-in-law Janet when I married Sandy. Alexander, or Sandy, as she called him, was Jamie's father. Let me tell you what it can do. I think once you hear that, you will know why it should be used very carefully. She took a deep breath. It's got no other description for it, but these are magic spells. What? I was horrified and jumped up, but she held up her hands to shush me. Just hear me out, Isabel. You're a sonsy lassie, you think about things, and I think you'll be all right with this. You see, the way it works is that you just read out what the spell says. The words are strange, but they can do all sorts of cures and treatments. There are minor things like curing squint eyes, club feet, birthmarks, hair lips, but there's more serious stuff too for injuries, burns, cuts and fevers and the like. I've used them on people I can trust. I used one just last year for a woman who was having labour trouble. The spells reduced her pain and suffering, and that's a good thing, surely. I suppose it is, I admitted, grudgingly. Another time there was a bairn with a bad fever, and I saved him. She looked at me even more keenly, as if her eyes were boring into my head. However, Isabel, there are 4 special spells as well, and this family has used these in the past, almost since we came to Scotland, maybe before. She riffled through the pages. Here, at the back, there's one of these spells that if it's read, listen carefully, lassie, it makes any man who hears it into a woman. If a woman hears it, she becomes quite bonny. You can imagine she likes that. She patted her hair. There were only a few white hairs among the gold. Her face was unlined compared to most women her age. Another makes a woman into a man, and there are another 2 spells that will reverse these. I've been told that away in the past, some of the Burrows families have used these. Aye, their laddies even married some of the women that were made. They could even carry bairns. The news was overwhelming. What on earth could these be used for? I gasped. My knuckles were clenched. Disguises to save people, spying, or maybe some men want to live as women, and some women as men. So, my dear, I'm giving you this. Need I say it? You have to use it wisely. You're horrified, but don't destroy it. It's very likely that sometime you can use it for good. Don't use it for evil purposes. I don't have to tell you to use it very carefully too. How do they work? I mean, what happens? Do the changes happen instantly? The healing ones are fast, just a few minutes. But the others? She shook her head. Not instantly. The first one, if it's recited to a man, he first starts shivering more and more violently until he goes unconscious. And over 2 hours, his body changes to a woman's. There's a drawback though. She stays unconscious for another day and a half, and she's awfully sore and dazed when she wakes up. She's a woman completely, but sometimes it takes months before she accepts her new life. I suppose it's that her mind takes longer to adapt. For changing back, the person gets a great fever first, then they're unconscious a day and a half. I've never had the chance to use the other 2, so I can't tell you about them, but I've been told the one where a woman changes to a man involves a fever, and the other way, a lot of shivers. But these spells have different words from the reverse ones. Funny that, but that's the way it is. Oh aye, one more thing. That yellowish stuff it's covered with, it's human skin. That's needed for the spells to work. What? I shrieked. This was getting worse. She caught my wrist. Sit down. That's why I can't give you a new one. Human skin is a bit hard to find nowadays. It took me a few hours to get calmed down, more or less. Jamie noticed, but I just said it was nothing when he asked. I wasn't ready to talk about it. Mary had given me great power, but an enormously risky one. I hardly slept that night thinking of the implications. The Kirk, or any religious organisation, would be horrified. The civil authorities too, but they might just be jealous of the power. No wonder Mary had told me to keep the book secret. It was a terrible responsibility. Some part of me wanted to destroy the book, but I was fascinated with the spell's potential too. In fact, fairly soon after I got the book, I was able to use 2 of them. One was a fishwife who was having trouble in a birth. When the spell was read to her, she produced a son with little further problem. The other time, a farm worker's foot had been crushed with a wagon wheel. I had him on his feet and walking in minutes. Mary had got me to try them, and she guided me. I was very pleased that I had helped these people, despite my worries, and Mary seemed satisfied with me too. So, I settled down to married life. Jamie's trading business was doing well. He traded back and forward with the continent, mainly with Holland. We all worked hard, but we had a comfortable way of life. We were even able to afford 2 servants, Wool, who had worked with the Burrows family for years, and Jenny, a young girl from a local farm, who helped me in the cooking and housework. Jamie's father died when I was pregnant with Alexander, my first, and Mary died a year after he was born. I asked her if I could use the book to help her, but she shook her head. Nah, lassie, it's just that I'm old, and the book canna help there. I think it was partly a broken heart too. We now have 4 children. My oldest is Alexander, the heir to the business, only 10 years old, and he has 3 younger sisters, Mary, Agnes, and Margaret. I am pregnant again, and I hope it's another boy. We now had the house to ourselves, except for Jenny and Wool. So I am now part of the Burrows family here in Fife. But earlier, Mary had proudly told me there was a greater extended family with branches at Edinburgh, Stirling, Fife and Dundee, and there was even an English branch now, in a town somewhere west of London. The head of the family there is Arthur Burrows, Lord Headford, so he has done well for himself. Our branch has no such claim to nobility, but Jamie is head of the thriving shipping and trading business here in Culross, and we even have a very small piece of land that we call Ballinshaws. Our relatives, the senior branch of our family, are at Blackhall, south of Galashiels in the Borders, lands that were given to our earliest Scottish ancestor, by Robert the Bruce. Having lands sounds impressive, but they are not large, certainly nowhere near to the size of the holdings of the Douglases, Bruces or Argylls. The Burrows were very family-minded, and the various branches of the families tried to keep in touch with each other, so just the year before we had spent a few days with Jamie's kinsman, Henry Burrows, and his wife Margaret, in Stirling. Michael, a widower, now using the Burrows spelling for his name, came from Blackhall with his son William and daughter-in-law, Agnes. There were some kin from Dundee as well, Andrew Burrows, his wife Elizabeth and their family. We had talked about the political situation, and it was then that I got the impression that the Dundee people had Jacobite sympathies and supported the old Stuart line of deposed kings. Jamie is a careful man, but he is open with me and shares his own feelings on situations, and he has told me many tales of the Burrows. He said the family had always done its best to serve the king when called for, but also tried to avoid being associated too much with any faction. So that way, the family had survived, but he said that there had been a lot of soul-searching in the family when King James was deposed 50-odd years before. He agreed with me that it looked like the Dundee folk still harboured Jacobite sympathies. I had liked Andrew's eldest son, an eager lad called Rob, full of the enthusiasm of youth, but with Jacobite sympathies like his father, and maybe even more ardent in wanting the return of the deposed Stuart line. I don't know why. Jamie and I certainly didn't. We had a good visit, and I knew Jamie would have liked to take a longer time letting me get to know his relatives better, but he had a busy shipping business to run. His brother Alexander could step in to help in an emergency, but he had his own linen weaving business in Dunfermline. My own brother, Davy Drummond, had an interest in lime making just along the coast to the east, but he was busy too. Jamie was a hard worker, always concerned for our family's prosperity, and his drive told him that was not served by taking time off work, except for urgent reasons. Scotland had now been joined with England almost 40 years now, and we had one ruler, who lived in London, and one parliament too, also in London. The king and government now want us all to be the same nation, but old loyalties, identification, isolation, and geographical distances resist that. We Scots still have our own legal system and forms of religion. The English have theirs. Mary had impressed on me that over the centuries the Burrows had endured, even prospered, despite the intrigues and factional fighting that have plagued Scotland. The family had done its best to keep a low profile to avoid these, through the rivalries, internal conflicts, dynastic intrigues, wars with England, and the vicious, tearing religious conflicts that even today cause problems. The Burrows family is Presbyterian, and Church of Scotland, like most of the people here, but the Presbyterians have their own factions, and a few Scots families actually follow the English style of religion. Episcopalians, they call themselves. Like the other lowlanders, we did not want a Catholic king, even though the deposed Stuart dynasty had Scottish roots dating back centuries. So we were shocked when we heard very alarming news. The deposed Stuart lineage had begun its most serious challenge in 2 generations. Charles Edward, the grandson of the deposed King James, had landed and raised his standard in the north of Scotland, and with support from some of the Highland clans, some Irish and other sympathisers. Then, over the next months, the Jacobites even penetrated into England as far as Derby, winning all battles by the fighting spirit of the Highland clansmen. But Derby was as far as they got. The tide turned as the support was too limited, and they have retreated back to Scotland. Jamie had made it clear he wanted absolutely no part of the rebellion. I consider myself a loyal subject of King George. Charles Edward Stuart may have a fair face, some even call him Bonnie, but he should never have come. It has stirred up a lot of trouble. Now he's retreated back to the Highlands. The government is better organised and has more troops chasing him. For Charles and those who support him, it's only a matter of time until they're finally defeated and destroyed. I'm afraid it will end with a lot of bloodshed. The government is much better armed. He gave a big sigh. And there's the problem it might cause for some of my family. Isabel, you remember met some months ago with the Dundee branch of the family? Actually, I went through a lot of arguing with Andrew, as it looked as if he supported the Jacobites. Anyway, I think I convinced him that the Jacobites would fail. So I've kept him out of trouble. I hope Andrew's son Rob doesn't run off to join the Jacobites. He seemed even keener than his father. That would be just stupid of him. And he's the eldest son too. I support the Hanoverians, and I think we're like most of neighbours around us here in Fife and Clackmannan, Kinross too. We're all glad to see the back of the Prince's forces. We're all Scots, and I know the Stuarts are Scottish originally, but James, the king that was deposed, had lost touch with his people. A month or so later, in April, Jamie and I had occasion to visit Dunfermline to do some business. We had taken a carriage rather than horseback because of my condition, and right away at the Mercat Cross I saw groups of men and a few women huddled together and talking, and by their manner I knew something serious had happened. I recognised one of the men as a friend, Henry Spence, an advocate and actually godfather to my son Alexander. We stopped the carriage and Jamie helped me as I carefully got out. Henry had seen us and came over, a broad smile on his face. "Nice to see you again, Jamie and Isabel." Henry was a plump man and dressed in black, as suited an advocate, I suppose. A three-cornered hat was perched over his florid face, and he even wore a white wig. Jamie shook hands with Henry, but I embraced him as an old friend, leaning forward because of the bulge in my belly and Henry's prosperous figure. "Henry, I'm surprised to see you here, but nice to see you anyway. I thought you'd be busy in Edinburgh." "You advocates are always finding something to argue over," I teased. He grinned. "Well, yes I am, Isabel, but there was some family inheritance business here needed my help." Henry's older brother William was Laird of Pitmellow, an estate close to us and another friend. William was as skinny as his brother was broad. He was used to an active outdoor life managing his property and did not bother about wigs. I was glad that Jamie had no use for a wig either. Henry waved his hand. "You see the folk here? You'll have heard the great news?" "No. What news?" "We've just got here." "Well, there's been a battle near Inverness, and Prince Charlie and his forces have been routed." Jamie shook his head and gave a big sigh. "I thought that would happen. So that removes the Jacobite challenge. It was only a matter of time, but the effects could be devastating. I wonder what the government would do with the prince." Henry laughed. "Well, they'll have to catch him first. He's escaped, and I imagine he will try to get back to France. Not that I support him in any way, but if he was captured, it might cause problems too. It would be best if he was off in France, with his tail between his legs." Jamie shook his head. "Aye, but what of his supporters left here? I think this is going to mean drastic and severe changes. It's only, 30 years ago since the last rebellion? The government will make sure this time that there's never any chance of another. There will be a few lose their heads, and this time they'll either get the Highland clans under tight control, or they might even destroy them altogether. Aye, there was Claverhouse's attempts, then the Old Pretender, and now this. All trouble. We're well out of it, Jamie." We exchanged some more family news and pleasantries with Henry, then shook hands with an invitation to visit us before he went back to Edinburgh. He tipped his hat. "I shall look forward to it. Christina will want news of your family." Henry's wife Christina had been a neighbour of mine when we were younger. She would be interested to know I was pregnant again. We completed our business in Dunfermline and headed home, where Jamie told our son about the battle. Alexander was excited to hear about fighting, but he was too young to really know the background, and he soon lost interest when Jamie had nothing much more to tell him. I sat later with Jamie and we talked about what the news would mean. In fact, it did not affect us too much. Like many of our neighbours and friends, we were very glad the rebellion was over. 100 years previously, the English Parliament and the King's forces had waged a war, and the King, the Prince's great-grandfather, had lost his head. Scotland had been dragged into it, and the complicated competing loyalties and manoeuvring for political advantage had caused terrible trouble and death. A generation after that, the Prince's grandfather James, who got deposed, had shown the same authoritarian streak, and that had contributed to his problems with Parliament. The times were changing. Parliament was getting greater control, and the kings now had to work more and more through it. Jamie and I were generally in agreement with that. Another great change was that we were now united with England, with its much larger population. We Scots had lost our independence 40 years ago, and were now joined with the old enemy, but it had been good for trade, with getting access to England's American colonies. The merchants through in Glasgow to the west were already filling their pockets from the trade. Jamie's company's trade was with the continent, but he had confided to me that maybe he should take more interest in trade with the American colonies. The various wars on the continent disturbed trade there, and we had discussed setting up our son as a merchant in Glasgow, where there was easier contact with the Americas and the West Indies. But I soon had my own, more personal things to concern me. I gave birth to another child, a boy, who we called Michael. The delivery went well, like all of my others, and I had no need to use the book. In the following weeks, we heard tales of the severe, even cruel measures to destroy any future threat of the Highlanders. But Prince Charles was never caught, and I hoped life would soon quieten down, and our family could settle back to minding its own business, running a trading business between Scotland and the Low Countries. That proved to be a foolish hope. It was on an evening 2 months later when our servant, Wool Thompson, knocked at the door to our quarters in our house. We only had Wool with us at the time, as Jenny was temporarily back at home helping her mother, who had just delivered twins. It was a lovely summer night, and the sun was just setting over to the west. The waters of the Firth danced in the red light. The Lothians across the Firth were almost lost in a pale purple haze. Wool spoke to Jamie as I looked up from my sewing. It sounded serious. "Sir, sorry to disturb you, but there's a man at the door. Anne, he says he wants to see you." That was unusual. Our house stood just to the west of Culross, by the shores of the Firth. Usually visitors arrived in the daytime and had given us prior warning of their arrival. "What like does he look?" "He's on foot, sir. And he looks gay-worn. I don't see a sword or pistol, though." We did not like unexpected visitors. Wool knew that too, and he would stand with us in case of any trouble. As Wool had said, the stranger did not appear to be armed, but I knew many men, especially travellers cooked, carry their pistols hidden under their dress, just in case of robbers. Jamie looked at me, always concerned for the family safety, and I nodded. "All right, you can let him into the house, but only past the door. And you stay here, Wool." While I watched, Jamie went downstairs with Wool and opened the door. Jamie had picked up his own sword. Wool had a heavy stick. The man eased himself in, blinking at the lamplight. I could see he was very young, with only the wispy beginnings of a beard. His complexion looked smooth enough, even though it was hidden a bit under a coat of grime. He was dressed all in black with a large tattered black cloak. The other clothes may have been good quality once, but they were now shabby, dirty and worn. He wore a broad hat that partly hid his features, but he took it off, pushing back his longish black hair. He looked familiar. "Good evening, sir. You wanted to see me at this late hour?" Jamie asked. "You had better tell me your business." The man bowed. "Yes, sir. I would like to speak with you, in private." He looked at Wool by Jamie's side. I could see Jamie was very suspicious, but suddenly I saw his head jerk, as if he knew the young man, and I recognised him too. It was Rob, Andrew's son from Dundee. We had last seen him a year before when we had met them in Stirling. Rob looked terrible, with a furtive, hunted look. I was also having a horrible realisation of his purpose, and that made me very apprehensive. Still, he was Jamie's family, and now mine. I could see Jamie thinking now that he recognised the young man. "Wool, I think you can leave us." We trusted Wool, but the less anyone knew of this visitor, the better. "Are you sure, sir?" "It's all right, Wool. I'm fine with this man. You can leave us, but first, would you bring us a bottle of wine, and some bread, and that rest of that bit of mutton?" "The man looks famished." "Come this way, sir," Jamie said, and directed him into the parlour. We all looked at each other awkwardly, until Wool brought the food and drink. "You'll be hungry, I think? Help yourself." Jamie pointed to the food, and we watched as he ate ravenously. "You'll be my kinsman Andrew's boy, from Dundee, I'm thinking." "Rob, is it they call you?" Jamie finally asked. Rob nodded. "And if I surmise things correctly, Rob, you're on the run. Is that right?" Rob nodded and was almost in tears. "You ran off and joined the Jacobites, I'm thinking." Rob just looked at Jamie warily. "And how's your father doing? And your mother? They know you're here?" "Yes, they know I'm here and they're doing well, sir. You mean, apart from being very concerned for you, to see if you can keep that stupid head of yours on your neck, or a rope from around it. And now you come around here wanting us to hide you? You'd better tell me about yourself and what's happened." Jamie was being harsh, but he was on edge and angry with the danger we were now in. Rob's voice was hesitant and broken. His story was incoherent, but we eventually put it together. I felt very sorry for him when I heard the details. Our suspicions were correct. He had rushed off to join the prince's army. To a young man, it must have sounded exciting, bold, even glamorous. Now his rash decisions and his impetuous youth had put his life in jeopardy. Our kinsman Andrew in Dundee had Jacobite sympathies, but fortunately he had not acted on them. Maybe Jamie's reluctance and arguments against them had given him second thoughts about joining the Jacobite forces. However, Rob had been less cautious and actually disobeyed his father's wishes and run off to join the Jacobite forces. He told us he had accompanied them in their advance south, fought at some battles, even had a minor wound at Carlisle, but then retreated north with them, and had been at the final battle at Culloden, as they called it. When he saw the battle was lost, he had tried to escape. He had been on the run for some days, but he was captured. And worse, he had been identified by the government troops and was being taken to Edinburgh to be tried for treason. He had been temporarily jailed at Perth, but he had somehow escaped and made his way home to Dundee. However, right away, our kinsman Andrew told him that he was in danger. In fact, Andrew and his family were already under suspicion, and if Rob was caught there, the whole family would be implicated. His father had suggested that he make his way to our place, because Jamie had boats that traded to Amsterdam and Antwerp. From either of these, Rob could make his way to France and join other exiled Jacobites. Jamie was angry, just holding his temper in check, the only sign his fingers tapping on the table, as Andrew and Rob had now put all of us in danger. Hiding Rob and helping him to escape was treasonous. In fact, it was our duty as loyal subjects of King George to immediately hand him over to the government. But he was family, and the Burrows had valued family ties over the centuries. I felt heartsick for the danger we could be putting ourselves and our family in, but he was kin, and I knew Jamie had a long loyalty to his extended family. "And how did you escape from the government troops at Perth?" Jamie asked. "You were lucky. I had been put on a horse and I was to be brought under escort to Edinburgh for trial. My arms were tied, but they came loose. I think it was one of the jailers had Jacobite sympathies and tied them loosely. Anyway, when I saw a chance, I jumped off the horse into the Tay as we were crossing it and they lost me. I nearly drowned even though I can swim well. It was cold too, but I managed to crawl out of the river and make my way home. But then my father sent me here. He said it was too dangerous there. He didn't think of the danger he was putting me in." Jamie snorted, but I listened quietly. Eventually, I could see Rob was exhausted, so I took him to a room and suggested he get some sleep. I went back and put my hands in my husband's. "Jamie, I know you think we are taking a terrible risk if we hide Rob, but I should let you know I support you fully. I understand what you are doing and why. However, in the meantime, we need to keep him well hidden until you can smuggle him aboard a ship. Are you all right with that? I'll hide Rob as much as I can, but I don't like it at all. I am a loyal subject of the king, and an elder in the kirk, and a respectable merchant, but family comes first. Yes, I'll try to get him away on my boat. But what about the boat's crew? Can you trust them?" "I can trust them all to keep their mouths shut. Besides, they all have good jobs working with me. I treat them well so they wouldn't like to see me in prison. Or worse. They'll not betray me deliberately, but they might let information slip accidentally." My hand went to my mouth. I wouldn't like that, and there's the bairns to think of. I now had 5 children. Wee Michael had been born a month previously. Jamie took my hand and kissed me. "I think of you and our family all the time. I hope I'm doing the right thing." The boat's captain was Jock Wardlaw, originally from Inverkeithing, but now lived in a nearby cottage. He was a good, reliable man, if a little bit fond of the beer flagon at times. Jock had been with Jamie's father, and he was devoted to him. Also, I had used the book to help Jock's wife Kate when she had a bad fever after the delivery of their second son, and Jock was eternally grateful. We would be all right with him. However, the boat was already off at sea, as Jamie had sent it to Holland only 2 weeks before. The trip over to Holland would take about 5 days under the absolutely best conditions, but I expected realistically it would be another 2 weeks before he got back, and then its cargo would need unloaded. Reloading with another cargo would take another week. That meant we would have to hide Rob for a month at least. The children were at an age where they would not know much, but we would have to make sure they told nobody that we had a visitor. We were in Dunfermline the next week when Jamie got talking with Captain Ainsley of the Town Guard. He greeted us. "Nice to see you, sir." He tipped his hat to me. "Ma'am, how is the shipping business?" he asked, and we got talking about business then, the state of the town, and trade and politics. "Things are getting back to normal." "With the rebellion over, Isaac?" Jamie asked. "Aye, sir, but they'll be making sure it doesn't happen again. They're still hunting down Jacobite sympathisers, and especially those who were in the rebel army. I hope they get them all." Isaac was quite vehement. He was a member of a small Presbyterian group who had suffered under the religious conflicts last century. Once he had mentioned that his grandfather had died at the Battle of Dunkeld, fighting against a minor Stuart rebellion, about 2 generations ago. He had no love at all for the Stuarts. Jamie nodded. "Yes, the government will make sure this is the last rebellion. This has been too serious, and they penetrated right into England. They won't stand for any more of that." "Aye, sir. Indeed. You're right. Oh, by the way, sir, they tell me they're concerned that some of the Jacobites might be trying to escape to France. There's going to be parties of soldiers going round all the ports to search for these rebels, and I've been ordered to assist them. If you see any sign of any of them, be sure you report it, sir." He gave a snarl. "I'd like to see them all hanging in the grass market. Them and their like killed enough of my folk." I winced internally at his vehemence. Another burger had come by. This was Tam Schooler, who ran a butchery business in town. He had heard us talking. I was speaking to my wife's brother. He's from Kirkcaldy. He said the troops were checking at the harbours, patrolling along the coasts, and going around inspecting boats and chandlers, even some of the inns and taverns. They've started further east, but I imagine they'll be along this way sometime soon, just to make sure. I hid my thumping stomach. The authorities were being much more thorough than I expected. With our small trading and shipping business to the continent, we would be sure to eventually get their attention. It's a long journey across the North Sea to the continent, I said. The storms could be dangerous. Aye, maybe. But these rebels may be desperate. I heard there's Royal Navy boats out in the North Sea and the Channel. Just checking as well. This was worse if they were searching even small boats. When we got home, we discussed it, and Jamie shook his head, looking very depressed. This makes it very difficult. He was flailing about for ideas. I wonder, could we disguise Rob as a sailor or fisherman? I'm sure he doesn't know much about boats. I've got a better idea. We could disguise him as a lassie, I said. An idea was developing at the back of my mind. Jamie made a face, as he did when he had a problem. He doesn't have much of a beard yet. I suppose we could shave him and that might work. Well, that might not matter. He did not understand my expression. How do you mean, Isabel? Jamie, just before I became your wife, your mother took me aside to have big talk about your family. You know you have the name Burrows. Not exactly too Scottish, is it? Well, yes, our ancestor came from France. A Jean Boudreau, or maybe it had an X at the end. I'm not sure. Anyways, they changed it to Burrows to make it sound less foreign. At first, they tried Budrose. Yes, your mother pointed out the rosebud on your family flag. But Jamie, you know your ancestor brought some other things. He laughed. Yes, there are rumours of a special book, but my mother didn't tell me much more. It seems to be some dark family secret. He stopped and peered at me. Isabel, do you know something? Your mother didn't tell you much, because you're a man. Aye, there's a special thing. A wee book. The custom in your family, now my family, is that knowledge of what's in this book is to be passed, wherever possible, through its women. So, Jamie, when we got married, your mother told me a lot more. You see, the Burrows family have had, at least all the time they've been in Scotland, maybe longer, this special wee book that can do all sorts of wonderful things. There are magic spells. At least, I think magic is the best way of describing them. I grinned. The horror on his face matched how I had felt when I first heard about the book. That's not exactly what good Christian folk like us should be using, but these things have been very useful over the generations, your mother told me. In fact, I've used the book a number of times too. However, Jamie, there's an extra special spell. It's unbelievable, but your mother was quite definite that it worked. You see, it can change men to women. I emphasized the words. Now, wouldn't that be a good disguise? Men into women? I could see he was still not sure whether to believe me. Yes, exactly that. And I was thinking, we could change Rob temporarily. I mean, to a girl. That would hide her from any searchers. I can't think of a better way. In fact, even if they suspected and examined her, she would be a genuine girl. Jamie was horrified. No wonder. This spell defied all logic, and I dreaded what the Kirk would say if they ever heard about it. My mother didn't tell me about that book at all, he protested. What does it look like? Nothing much at all. It's a strange little book with a yellow cover. Your mother says it's tanned human skin. He was even more horrified. That's horrible. It's primitive and heathen. You're right, but actually, we could use it on Rob and change him to a lassie, to disguise him, then change her back to a man when the time is right. It would be a very good disguise. But Jamie's eyes were wide, and he was shaking his head. No, we can't do that. I'll let you think on that, Jamie. I think my husband would have preferred to forget about it, as he didn't mention it the next day, and he was almost avoiding me. However, the affairs of nations all too often insert themselves into the most intimate parts of our lives. When a neighbour said the government troops had been checking in Inverkeithing, getting ever nearer, Jamie finally decided it was time to act. Isabel, maybe you're right. We'll have to disguise Rob. Neither of us was looking forward to it, but Jamie and I called Rob before us. Jamie explained. Rob, it's about your safety. We had hoped to keep you quiet here and sometime soon get you onto one of my boats and take you over to the continent, but they tell us the government troops have been searching all the eastern ports for escaping Jacobites. They're getting closer and I imagine they should be here in Culross in a day or so. My shipping business is an obvious place to search, and you're in danger. So are we. It's almost too late for you to slip away. Have you thought of another plan? Jamie asked. Rob's face was ashen. No, have you? Jamie hesitated, still not sure. I was speaking to Isabel and she suggested a plan, but it's an awfully drastic one. It would involve disguising you as a woman. Rob's eyes went wide, but he did not reject it out of hand. Do you think it would work? He felt at his face, his wispy attempts at a beard and moustache. Would it work if my face was shaved, or would it still be too bristly? Well, maybe, but we were thinking of another way. What about a magic way of doing it? He looked at us as if we had lost our minds. What? Magic? I don't think there is really any such thing as magic. It's only superstition. Don't play with me. I took his hands. Rob, you are family, and there are special things in the Burrows family that maybe you've not heard of. Things that have been passed from generation to generation, probably even before our ancestor came to Scotland all these years ago in the time of King Robert, the Bruce. These things were used discreetly, and only very, very carefully. Rob looked at us warily. I began. There's a certain book, passed through the Burrows families, through the women, as much as possible. Your own family has a copy. The Sterling folk, the senior branch at Blackhall, has one too. The family prefers to pass the knowledge through the women of the family. So it was given to me by Jamie's mother Mary, passed to her by her mother-in-law before she died. She in turn had it from her mother, Mary told me. It's a book of spells, written in what I think must be an ancient language. There are a lot of spells, and they're mostly for healing. I've actually used some to heal cuts, help in childbirth, and so on. But there is one special spell. I don't know its original purpose, even if it had any, but if a man hears it, he will become a woman, fully. The spell lasts well and doesn't wear off until a reverse spell is spoken. Jamie's mother said these spells are only used sparingly. She did not want them widely known, but these are desperate times. Your life and the safety of my own family here are in danger. I could see Rob was hesitant. Little wonder. So was I. I had no idea if it would work, and the extent of the power I was about to use. I was hoping he wouldn't ask if I was absolutely sure if it worked. I had never used it before. You say it can be reversed. I could change back? When could you do that? You would probably need it only as long as it takes the government troops to finish searching here. I warn you though, Rob, the spells are severe. Some men have died from them, especially older men, but you should be fine. You're young and healthy. Rob shook his head vehemently. That means I would have to live as a woman for a whole week at least, acting as one, wearing women's clothes. I'd be weaker too. That's terrible. He shook his head. No, I'm going to risk it. There must be somewhere in this village that I can hide. Jamie shook his head. I don't think there's a place, and we can't hide you either. Well, maybe I'll try to slip through the redcoat lines. Jamie was getting angry. That is complete stupidity, and it would put all of us at risk. And where do you think you would go? I think you should try the spell. It's the best way. We tried more persuasion, but he was adamant, and Jamie and I were getting more and more desperate. The next day we heard the government troops were now even nearer, at Queensferry. I shook my head. Jamie, this can't go on. We have to be ruthless to protect ourselves and our family. I agree. Have you any ideas? Later that night, Rob was surprised when we came to him with a bottle of wine. We will try to get you away tomorrow, Jamie told him. I am actually going to have a man take you over to the Lothians. I've heard they are not searching so much there. I hope so. I have a friend over in Borrisdowness who can keep his mouth shut and he will give you place to hide. He also trades with the continent at Antwerp and can take you there. So Rob, I may not see you after tomorrow. I wish you a safe journey to the continent. I warn you though, the Dutch and French are at war, but I hope you make it to France. They have not caught Charles Edward yet. It is possible he may have escaped and already be back in France again. I have to say, I disapprove of what you have done and what you are proposing, but you are kin, so I have to help you. Rob, this is your last day here and I have some wine. Let us toast each other. Jamie poured 3 cupfuls of wine, gave him one, passed another to me, and toasted. Confusion to our enemies. Yes, Rob, you will recognise that as a Jacobite toast, but it is just that I want our family ties to remain, and for us to be safe. We touched our glasses and drank. It was good wine, and he toasted us back, to the endurance of our families, and then we had yet another toast to the cooperation of our families. We talked about his plans for the future. I was dismayed, Jamie even more so when Rob still talked about rejoining service with Charles. That did not promise much for his future welfare or even survival. Charles would have to rely on the erratic goodwill of foreign rulers like the French king, and I wondered how long he would support him. With the Highlands under rigid control, Charles had little political influence left. Rob got more cheerful, and did not notice I had only drunk a little of the wine. Jamie poured him another, and Rob drained it fast. It was good wine, but Jamie and I contented ourselves with sips. "Well, I wish you good night, Rob," and I offered my hand. I'm not sure if he was exactly unconscious, but he certainly was incapable of much when we went back into his room a half-hour later. He was in a restless, drunken sleep. I got out the little book, shuddering with tension, my heart in my mouth. I turned to the right page. "Better you don't hear this, Jamie. I prefer you as a man. Why don't you take a walk along the seashore?" I closed the door to Rob's room. It seemed to have got very quiet, and all I heard was the noise of some waves on the shore and the screeching complaints of some gulls. Rob had begun snoring slightly. As clearly as I could, and quietly, I read out the spell. My heart was thumping. Nothing seemed to be happening. He was groaning and gasping a little, turning restlessly. I was getting worried that the spell did not work. Then I saw a slight tremble, a shiver, and another, more definite. Then he was shaking badly. It was only a few minutes later when I called Jamie back in. "Jamie, maybe you should see this too. Your mother told me about it. If it works, it will be incredible. Terrible too, but you should see the spell working for yourself. Maybe you thought it might be nonsense, but something is definitely starting. I'm feeling strange too. It's supposed to affect women, but much less." I pointed at Rob and I heard Jamie gasp and mutter something under his breath. "Look at him, Jamie. He started shivering, and he's unconscious now. Oh my God." I cried. "It's going so fast now, his skin's like a blur. Look, I need to check on his body. Can you help me undress him?" Between us, Jamie and I eased off his clothes. Then we watched as the transformation took place. Neither of us had ever seen the amazing changes of the spell before. It was as if fast little ripples were running all over his body, each performing just a tiny change, but they were cumulative, and the body gradually transformed. I had started feeling slightly ill and shivery too, but it looked as if it was passing, and I turned my attention back to Rob. I was a little uncomfortable too, in my mind. I had never seen any man naked other than Jamie, and I wondered what he thought of the situation. I was almost relieved when I saw the changes begin. The most noticeable change was on the penis and scrotum. They gradually shrank to his groin to form what first looked like a slight mound, then that split to form a crease like a woman's genitals. On the chest, the nipples and areolas first grew puffy and swelled, followed by the underlying flesh expanding and pushing out until a pretty pair of rounded breasts were formed with large pale brown nipples and surrounds. These were set over a narrow high waist and a soft, gently rounded belly and full hips and rear. The figure was now distinctly, unmistakably a woman's. I trembled at the power I had used and its effects, but the proportions of the face and body had changed too. The upper torso had shrunk while the waist and shoulders narrowed. By contrast, the hips and buttocks swelled to a woman's proportions. The neck had grown longer, and the rougher male skin and features softened into a girl's pretty face. Rob had had the beginnings of a beard. It was still there, but it now looked totally strange on a delicate female chin. The girl had lovely, full, deep pink lips. Rob's situation had drastically changed. Jamie looked at me quizzically. "Isabel, are you all right? You look as if you're different too." "Maybe. I was feeling slightly dizzy some minutes ago, and I had some minor aches, but I'm feeling better by the minute. I feel much better now." It took about 2 hours then. Finally, the changes were complete, and before us, totally unconscious, there was a new woman. I gently moved her. "Well, Jamie, now we've seen it. I don't know about you, but this has been frightening for me. However, I think the change has gone well. She was young and strong, she's survived, but she's unconscious. Your mother told me the people changed will not wake up for more than a day, even as much as 2 days. That seems to be normal." Jamie looked at me. "Isabel, you've definitely changed a bit too. It's affected you." I was pleased. Mary had told me I would change too, so it was not unexpected. "In what way, Jamie?" "I think you look younger and you really look quite bonny. I mean even more than you are," he added hastily. I laughed at his awkwardness, but I was delighted and I kissed him. I retied my skirt at my waist. When I had a look at myself in a mirror, I was even more delighted. In fact, I was so delighted and so pleased with the new appearance of my body, I put it to enthusiastic use later that night with Jamie. We now had a girl below us, and a very beautiful one, apart from the wisps of beard and moustache still on her face. I wondered why she was so beautiful, but if the spell made a man into a woman, why not a beautiful one? A beautiful woman would have many advantages. Many doors would be opened for her. A beautiful woman could do well provided she used her beauty carefully. "I wonder where the spell came from and what it was used for," Jamie asked. I laughed. Some distant ancestor of yours? Some witch? Some dark secret at the back of your family? Anyways, Jamie, as she's a young woman now, she's naked, so I think you should give her some privacy. You better leave too while I get a woman's gown on her. Yes, all right. I decided just to put a simple nightgown on her at first, but as I struggled to maneuver her into it, I was wondering what the girl's reaction would be to her new body and existence. We had tricked her, and I expected she would be horrified and furious, to say the least, at what we had done. I only hoped she would accept it and be willing to act as a girl well enough to pass any government searches. Her body would be fine, but she would also have to behave as a girl and use female mannerisms too until I changed her back. I wondered about the reverse spell. Maybe I would have her read it herself. I liked my new looks, and certainly did not want anything that might remove them. However, I was annoyed with myself that I had to be so underhanded. I had tricked her and done something to her against her will, but the main thing was that she was safe. If anyone saw her or asked about her, we could just say she was the daughter of some kin at Blackall. Anyway, hopefully it was only for a few days and we would change her back as soon as it was safe. To help with the deception, I laid a pile of women's clothes by her bed, just in case we got any surprise visit by government troops. The beard would have to go. I tugged at its remnants of the beard, but it was still firmly attached. There was some black hair on her breasts too. I suppose that would fall out, but maybe we did not have the time. I did not like it, but I would have to change her pubic hair into a more modest girl's pattern. Jamie had come in again, but I pushed him out. I think you should leave, Jamie. I need to shave her. At her groin, I mean, so it's now a woman's pattern. There's some hair on her breasts too. I better remove that. She shouldn't be seen naked by a man. I called him a half hour later. Yes, I shaved off all the male hair and it's improved her. She's actually a bonny lassie now. I'd have never believed it. Jamie nodded. Yes, she is. What now? He asked. We wait for her to wake up. But I'm not looking forward to that. She will be furious. But we have to be firm with her. Yes, she will be frightened and difficult for a day or two. Getting her to put on women's clothes may be another problem. I nodded. Yes, and then introducing her to a woman's life and getting her to pretend so she doesn't stand out. At least it shouldn't be for too long. Then, we can change her back. What about the long term? Jamie grimaced. That's Rob's decision. He'd got this idea in his mind about escaping and joining Charlie in France, or wherever, but that's not likely to be a good future for him. Charles would be a refugee, a hanger-on at the court of an exile, at the whims of a foreign king. He came from France. Maybe the French king would support him as long as it suited him to cause trouble with the English. Jamie, we can't be responsible for Rob's life. We've done enough already with him here. That was true, but I knew Jamie was still feeling a responsibility. I watched over the unconscious girl for the next day and a half, massaging her limbs and washing her every few hours. When she eventually began to move on her own, I knew she would soon wake up, and it was time to get on with the next part. The girl would need clothing suitable for her age, and I looked through my own clothes to find some I could loan her. I had more clothes than many women, but not nearly as much as some titled lady. We were frugal too, and I looked out some stuff that was past its best or didn't fit me so well. After a day and a half, the girl started groaning, and her limbs began to move sporadically, mostly in short jerks. I checked her body over again and pulled out some of the hairs I had missed the first time on her chest and at her groin. When the girl's eyes began to flicker, I lifted her head and gave her some sips of water. She choked and spluttered slightly, then lay back with a groan, still drifting in and out of consciousness, occasionally wincing as if in mild pain. She slept for another hour or so, then wriggled again, her fingers fumbling at herself and her nightgown. The girl muttered something incoherent, as if trying to get her thoughts together, but her mind must have been too foggy to concentrate. I warmed up some water and dabbed at her crusted eyes with a soft cloth. Try to open your eyes, I suggested. The girl finally forced her eyes open, blinking at the light. I feel awful, she croaked. What's happened? Yes, it's the spell's effects, I said, as casually as I could. But it has worked nicely. You're quite pretty. Pretty? What did you say? The new girl muttered, stretched again and tried to sit up, but she was too stiff and lay back down again, staring at the ceiling. I could see her concentrating, trying to get her thoughts together, but it was too much effort, and she fell asleep. About an hour later, I saw her rubbing at her eyes, and she sat up, her fingers playing with the fabric of the gown I had put on her. I feel strange, and what's this I'm wearing? She asked. It's soft. It's a nightgown. I pushed a cushion at her back. Here, I said. Feel your body. Better get used to it. Try your chest first. I took the girl's hand and placed it on her chest. The girl's eyes were barely open as her fingers clutched at the two soft mounds on her chest. I saw the puzzled expression first, then her face twisted and her eyes flew open. Shaking her head, she lifted her gown and gave a cry of shock. Right in front of her were two jutting breasts, each with a large pink nipple and areola. "What is this?" she shrieked. "What's happened to me? Why do I have breasts? You made me into a woman," she screamed in a sudden realization. "I didn't want that. I told you. Rob, forgive us. Yes, we did. You're now a woman. You didn't want it, but we gave you that old family spell to change you into a girl. It had to be done to hide you. There was no choice. You are an escaped refugee Jacobite soldier. You were fleeing after a battle. The government won, and the redcoats will be hunting you down. This is to disguise you, to save you from pursuers, but it is to protect us too. If we were found to be hiding you, we could be charged with treason. Do you remember?" The girl nodded. "Yes, I remember now," she whispered, "but I didn't think it would be like this. I said you would become a woman. You didn't want it, but you need to check over your new body to get familiar with it. Start with your breasts. You should get used to them, otherwise you will find them in the way. You will be shocked, but hopefully it's only for a few days." I looked at the girl. Her dark eyebrows were delicate and nicely arched. Her skin was very fair, but had reddish blotches from the spell. I wondered if that was normal, but if she was supposed to be beautiful, the blotchiness would disappear. In fact, in a few hours the blotchiness from the spell had passed, and the girl would be quite lovely. Unfortunately, her hair was a bit too short for a woman, and I would have to get her a wig or something to cover her head in case anyone saw her. That might be awkward, but there was no choice. The girl shook her head violently and held her arms close to her as if to shield herself. "No, I can't. I don't want this at all. I think you should see what you have." I pulled off her nightdress. She actually put her hands to hide her pubis, and I thought that the girl's koi pose was already female. But I took one arm and, gently but firmly, placed the girl's right hand over her left breast. "Feel yourself." She snatched her hand away, but I persisted. Hesitating, the girl ran her fingers over her breasts, pressing them gently, then more firmly. Her fingers found their way to her nipples. I saw the expression on her face, a little twitch of surprise. They would seem ridiculously prominent to her, especially when she touched one and it stiffened, making it stand out even more, and little ridges even raised in the surrounding areola. It was the same with the other breast. I was amused at the expression on her face. She was just whimpering in a mixture of wonder and shock. I decided to push her, and I ran my hands over the girl's breast too, stroking it, and lightly pinched a nipple. The girl squealed. "Stop it," but I ignored her and gently rolled it. Her mouth went open and she began blushing. "That's so strange. Such an intense feeling. I can't describe it. Nice, isn't it? There's more. Now, look down below your belly. Have a look at yourself there." Below the breasts, her body narrowed to a slim waist, then a slightly rounded belly between wide hips. "Look at yourself," I said. "Your groin, between your legs. That is the center of a woman's pleasure. Touch that." The girl ran her finger along the groove and gave small noise, between a squeal and a whimper. "That's even more intense." She shivered. "It makes me feel strange. How will I stand it? What has happened?" she asked, stopping momentarily, noticing her voice, now higher pitched. My voice has changed too. Why am I talking like this? I've got a woman's voice. It's all the results of the spell. You are a woman, completely. You were a man, used to a man's body. So many things in your new body will feel very strange at first, but you will get used to it. Here's a mirror. Look at your face. It's pretty. It was a certainly girl's face, but with red patches on her cheeks and chin and tear-stained. It had just a hint of Rob's features. Blue, grey eyes. The same cheekbones, although maybe a little more prominent. Much the same mouth, although now fitted with fuller lips. She had lost her heavy male eyebrows. She still had dark hair, but it was a bit too short for a woman. I might have to cover it. You've got lovely dark hair too. I took her face in my hands and looked into her eyes. Your eyes are pretty too. Dullish just now. That's to be expected as you're still recovering, but in a short time they should look brighter. Your lashes are still a bit short too, but if the spell works as it usually does it, will make you grow longer ones. Mind you, I'm glad you're concerned with your face. As a woman you should be, but don't worry, it'll improve quite a bit, even in a day. You've got nice balanced features, your nose, brow and chin are all in proportion. It's a pretty face and pretty full lips. I stroked her eyebrows but she jerked away from me. "I don't want to be pretty. I hate this. It's not right. You have to change me back as soon as you can. I fully intend to, But in the meantime, you must act as a girl convincingly in case the soldiers come around. That means you must not look awkward or uncomfortable. Don't fiddle with your body or play with your clothes. The body is a good disguise, but don't draw attention to yourself. Now, have a look between your legs. Use a mirror. The girl opened her legs, angled the mirror, and gave a small, despairing cry. It's all gone, she wailed. Instead of the familiar dangling male parts at the base of her belly, she had a soft mound split by a fissure. I gently spread her legs apart to open it and reveal her moist opening. Touch it. Pull it open, I said. The girl shook her head. No, please. I cannot. That can't be me. I assure you it is. That is what women look like, and you are one. She shook her head violently. No. I can't. This is awful. You're a woman. Completely. Like it or not, and you should getting used to it. And that involves knowing your body. You're probably going to have it for some weeks. She tried to resist, but I took her hand and put it to her pubes. I know, the changes are frightening, but you'll just have to get used to them. I hope it won't be for long. So, you can stop all your complaining. It's all different. So strange. This is what women are like, she asked hollowly. She was almost in tears. I took the girl in my arms and stroked her back to comfort her. Yes, and you should get used to it. Try to adapt to it as soon as you can. You didn't know women look like that? You'd never been with a woman? No, not at all. I laughed. When you're a man again, and you're with a woman, you will know how pleasure her. Now, if you feel up to it, you'd better get some clothes on. She scowled at the garments, but she put on a shift, petticoat, and gown as I passed them to her. They actually fitted her quite well. The gown fastened with ties at her back. She's just a bit slimmer than me. My old shoes were just a bit too large, but they would do. We were only just in time. Only few hours later, a troop of redcoats rode into the village, and our business was the first to be searched. They looked through the house and the warehouses and got my family lined up, but the inspection was cursory. They barely gave the new woman a glance. I had covered her shortish hair with a mutch and put a slight dab of rouge on her pale cheeks. Jamie just explained she visiting from our relatives in the borders. She looked nothing like Rob, other than the colour of her hair and eyes. In fact, she had lost inches in height. Her face and figure were totally female. She looked very convincing. I suddenly realised I had not given Rob a female name. This is our relative Caroline Burrows, visiting from near Galashiels, I said hastily. Rob gave me a startled look, but did not say anything. After some questioning and warnings to report anything suspicious, the troops left. The new girl was trembling. Well, Rob, we passed inspection, I said. A good thing we changed you. Anyway, just a few more days and we'll be able to change you back. Jamie has some stuff getting ready to go to the continent, and you can go on the boat. I should warn you, though, the Royal Navy may take it in their mind to search boats. You might have to spend some time in the bilges. But in fact, we were stymied. I expected the searches to lessen off, especially as the troops had not discovered any Jacobites. But there was still a continual presence of troops at the ports, and they kept checking us without any warning, so we had to be continually careful. I thought it better not to change her back right away. To help with the deception and the convenience, we kept the name Caroline for Rob. Caroline was the name of the king's wife. She protested, of course, even more when we kept her in women's clothes, but we had to keep up the pretense. Jenny came back about then, as her mother was well enough to cope. That made things easier for me. She was only mildly surprised to see Caroline, and accepted my explanation that she was a visiting relative. We could easily afford Jenny, but I still did a lot of the cooking myself, and I had a house and my children to look after, so I also put Caroline to help Jenny. It's in case somebody comes and sees you not doing anything. Another thing, we're supporting you. The least you can do is help us. She was annoyed, but she helped. Jenny was glad for the extra help. She was a pretty girl, and I did not think it would be too long before some man took her off. Then there was the time, 3 weeks after her change, when Caroline had her first bleeding period, and that took a lot more care and comforting. She was very upset and complained, so I had to continually emphasize that it just showed her disguise was perfect, and that it would only last a day or two more until the troops left, and, anyway, it would not affect the reverse spell. I had intended to keep her hidden away, but my plans were upset when I heard the sound of a carriage, and when I looked out I saw it was neighbours, George Meikle and his wife Meg. "Caroline," I hissed. "We've got visitors. Be careful." I went to the door. "Well, this is a surprise," I said, pretending I was pleased. Normally I would have been delighted to see them, but not when Caroline was with us. "Good to see you, Meg and George. But what brings you here?" Meg replied. Oh, it was a fine day and I wanted a breath of fresh air, so I persuaded George take a drive. Well then, you'd better come in. You'll have some tea? I'll call Jamie. He's loading a boat, but he'll be glad of a break. I saw the look of surprise when they saw Caroline. Oh, this is our relative Caroline Burrows, visiting from our kin at Blackhawk. Caroline actually curtsied as a younger woman would do to a senior. Pleased to meet you. Welcome to Fife, Caroline, said George. How long are you here for? Oh, only a few more weeks until she goes home, I said. Caroline was pale as she fumbled with some questions, but she gradually seemed to get her nerve. At last the tea was finished and Meg pulled her purse to her. Well, Isabel, Jamie, Caroline, we better get going. Oh, Isabel, we're having a few friends over in a week. I wondered if you and Jamie would join us, and, of course, Caroline, you're especially welcome too. You could get to meet more folk around here. We would love to see you. That's wonderful, I said tactfully, my mind racing ahead, trying to anticipate problems. You're not really taking me out visiting, are you? Asked Caroline when the visitors had left. I'm afraid we have to. There would be questions unless you were seriously ill. It's politeness. They'd expect it. And don't worry, you will pass. That was a nice touch, your curtsy. She blushed. I cautioned Caroline as Jamie drove us to the Meikle residence a week later. I probably know most of the people that will be here. They're fine folks, so you can relax. But mind, you keep your wits about you. Caroline looked very pretty. I had loaned her one of my better gowns and got her some shoes that properly fitted her, fresh from the shoemaker's last. Her gown was moderately open at the neck and showed the curves of the tops of her breasts and a hint of the valley between them, but under some carefully placed lace. She was wearing a pair of my stockings, tied above her knees. I had loaned her a silver chain with a locket for her neck. Her hair was still a bit short, but I had put it up and decorated it with some red ribbon, and in fact it looked quite good. She a lovely long narrow neck. A little stray wisp of dark hair showed against the pale skin at the back of her neck. You look pretty. I encouraged, but she just pressed her lips together. Meg welcomed us in. I knew most of the guests, and they would be sizing Caroline up and wondering who she was. Worse, I saw two young men there, and their eyes got that interested gleam when they saw Caroline. I recognised one as John Spence, the son of our friend William, Laird of Pitmellow. Good evening. How nice to see you all, Jamie announced, and I gave them all a big smile. This is our relative Caroline Burrows, who is visiting us for a few weeks, Jamie added. We went round all the visitors, introducing Caroline. I was holding her trembling hand. You say you're from Blackhawk. Where is that? Someone asked. It's near Galashiels, Caroline said. Oh, do you know the Hugh Scott family? They live around that area, I think. Caroline slightly inclined her head. I'm sorry, I don't know a family of that name. I introduced her to the two young men. She did well, if more than a bit rigid and terse. You did well, Caroline, I said, as Jamie drove us home. I think you passed your test well. These men, they were getting too curious about me. She complained, and they wouldn't leave me alone. I had noticed the young men speaking to her while I did my own socializing. Well, you're a pretty girl, so of course they're interested in you. Most young women would be flattered with the attention of men. In fact, they would expect it. I'm not a girl, and I definitely don't want it. She burst out. This is torturing me. I'm continually on edge. She was not the only one. Yes, I understand, and I don't want complications either. However, I now knew I had to be prepared for some consequences. The men would be interested in a pretty girl, and mothers would be eyeing possible matches. That meant future invitations to other social occasions, or the men themselves would be paying visits. In fact, just a week later, one of them came by. It was John Spence, riding on a horse. Well, Mr. Spence, what brings you here? I asked, as if I didn't know. Oh, I was just out for a ride, and as I was passing this way, thought I would pay a visit. Then, thank you for your consideration, Mr. Wilson. Would you like to come in briefly? Caroline was the attraction, of course. She flinched briefly at his appearance, and after some slightly strained conversation, I found something to do and let them talk together. She was more confident and handling herself better, but I was relieved when John finally took his leave. You handled yourself well, I said. Her eyes were cold. Thanks. But you should not have left me alone with him. It makes me feel uncomfortable. He thinks I am a girl. Please tell me he won't be back. You are a girl, and whether he comes back depends on how much you discouraged him. Did you? No, not really. I was too nervous. How do I do that anyway? Well, Caroline, unless you were definite, he will be back. Couldn't you tell him to keep away? She pleaded. Caroline, we're not of a social class like titled lords and ladies with their airs and graces and chaperones and all that nonsense. Tell him yourself. You've got a good Scots tongue in your head. Besides, if you decided to stay a girl, he'd be a good match for you. I was teasing her, but if she stayed as a girl, it might solve a lot of problems. Never, she screamed. I want changed back. This body is small, weak, and awkward. These breasts and hips catch on things. Then you need to be more careful. I snapped. I don't have a problem. I was amused when I heard Jenny talking with her, telling her to be flattered at John's attention, but Caroline was not persuaded. The sooner she was away, the better. Caroline was feeling the tension, and as the days passed, I admit I was getting impatient too. She was as well disguised as she could be, but I was continually worried in case she let something slip or her behaviour aroused questions, so I had to make alternate plans to get her away. One was to give her a copy of the reverse spell and send her as a female over to the continent with my husband's friend Jock Waddle over in Borrisdowness. There were still too many checks on our own boats. I discussed it with Jamie, and he approved, but there was a major snag. I had no intention of giving her my copy of the old book, as I needed it for my own use. I could copy the reverse spell, but it needed human skin to work, or so Jamie's mother had told me. So, I was faced with the problem of getting fresh human skin. I remembered Mary's comment about the difficulty. I wondered if I could bribe some surgeon, but that would raise far too many questions. I was finally able to get some, fortunate for me and Caroline, unfortunate for the victim, but he got a new pair of breeches from it. One of Jamie's men, a long-time employee called Sandy Laidlaw, was working some complicated wooden hoist at the dock, and he must have overloaded it as a wooden pole snapped under the weight. The wood splintered, and a sharp-edged piece of wood swung through the air and ripped open Sandy's leg. He screamed and fell on the rough wood of the dock, blood seeping through his ripped breeches. Actually, when I looked at it, I saw the injury was not too serious, but the pole had stripped a strip of skin from his thigh. It would bleed a lot and be painful for a week or two, but he would not be crippled. I got the thought of using the book to heal him, but I had a sudden other idea too. Take him into the house and I'll see to him. I had Jamie and another man lift Sandy into the house. I motioned to Jamie to send the other man away, but Jamie remained. What are you going to do? He asked. Well, first you can get the breeks off him so I can have a better look at his leg. That looks painful, Jamie said, and Sandy was gasping. I gently tested the thigh. Sandy's face was twisted with pain. There did not appear to be anything broken, although some yellow fat was showing and the underlying muscle was a bit torn. There was a flap of skin hanging loose. Are you going to bandage it? Jamie asked. You remember I have a special book? Oh, that. You're sure it will work? All the other spells have worked, and actually, Sandy may have given me something I need. What's that? I whispered in his ear. I think Sandy has lost some skin. Jamie's eyes went wide. I ran into my room and got out my book. Sandy, I am going to heal you, but mind you, never a word to anybody about how I do it. Do you promise? He nodded, painfully. Aye, Mrs. I carefully cut off the flap of skin, laid it aside, and read the healing spell to him. He looked at me, puzzled. Then he drew in his breath and let it out slowly. As we watched, the wound stopped oozing blood, the skin pulled together, and in a few minutes his leg was healed. Only a slight whitish patch remained. Get up and try your leg, Sandy, I said. He did, with absolutely no problem. He was delighted. What was that you did, Mrs. Burrows? Oh, it's just that I can do things, but never a word to anybody. I hoped he would keep his mouth shut. He was old. In fact, he was getting past his working days, and was already known for his garrulous tall tales and exaggeration, so I was reasonably confident that even if he said something, nobody would believe him. If anyone asked me, I would just say he had a scratch and was very much exaggerating. Jamie, maybe you can pay for a new pair of breeks for Sandy. I was trembling with the stress, but I had what I needed too, a strip of human skin. Holding my revulsion, I soaked it in strong salted water, but it also needed to be tanned to preserve it until it could be used. There had been some oak logs cut in the woods, so I stripped some bark off a log, boiled it with water, and then soaked the skin in the solution for 2 weeks. There was not much skin, only a strip as long as my middle finger, but it was enough. I got some dark ink and copied the reverse spell onto it in the smallest writing I could, and checked the words twice, just to make sure. I had to use both sides of the small scrap of skin to get all the words in. We had yet another visit from John Spence, and I let him and Caroline go for a walk together. Well? I asked. Did you tell him his attentions were not welcome? No, she faltered. I couldn't bring myself to do it. But I need to get away. He makes me feel awfully uncomfortable. I feel strange with him. I knew why. It was the spell still working its inexorable effect, but she had said she wanted to get away. Maybe that was the best course, so we called Caroline to our room, and Jamie outlined her choices. It's now quite a few weeks you have been with us. We know you are getting impatient, and so are we. We have to make more definite plans, so you've got several choices. The first, you accept that you are a girl, and you try your best to act as one. We will treat you as a daughter and look after you. That would mean a very changed attitude from you. You would have to accept your new life and stop fighting against it. Another thing, Caroline, I added. I have to tell you, in some months you will start to think of yourself as a woman and be attracted to men. We already know a certain man is attracted to you. Sometime you might even want to get married. Her eyes went wide in horror. Never, never. She protested a lot. Jamie sighed. All right, the second choice is, we change you back and you leave us immediately. You can try to get to France or somewhere else on your own. Unfortunately, we have no way of helping you once you leave here. I think it is likely you would be caught again. Caroline's face tightened. The third choice, we could smuggle you abroad, still as a girl, and that should disguise you in case any Navy ship intercepts you. Isabel has made a copy of the reverse spell, and you can take that and use it to change you back when you are safe on the continent. I would be fairly safe giving it to her. Its only effect was to reverse the first spell, and Caroline was the only person who had gone through it. It would not affect anyone else. Jamie looked at her. There, you have the 3 options. I want you to think about these carefully. I will not stay as a woman. But you can't be here as a man. The soldiers check around too much. She just stared at us. Jamie nodded. All right, I think the best option is the third. I don't want you on one of my boats. I think the authorities are still too suspicious of me. Besides, my boat is fairly small, so I will arrange to get you over to Borystunus to Jock Waddle. His boat is bigger and would be more comfortable for you. You could have more privacy. Do you agree? Yes, I agree. I handed Caroline the piece of tanned skin. I made this for you. The spell to change you back is written on it. Need I tell you? Guard it with your life. Do not lose it. This is the only thing that can turn you back into a man. Better make sure you can read it too. Read it silently. I don't want to hear it. I saw her lips move. Yes, I can read it, but these are strange words. I have no idea where they came from. Maybe it's an ancient language. However, you are now ready. When do you want to leave? As soon as I can. Jamie himself took Caroline over the very next day in a skiff. I embraced her on the dock. All right, you will be taken over to Jock Waddle. He trades with Antwerp, and when you get there, you can change back when the time is right. You should be careful how you use the spell. I have been told the reverse spell is severe as the other, and you will become unconscious again. Remember, make sure you have male clothes to change back into as well. This money will pay for them. I passed her 2 small silver pieces. You need to find a very secluded, safe place, and you may need to get someone you can trust to look after you while you are unconscious. Then, read out the spell out loud. It will affect only you. You will be unconscious a day and a half. You're sure it will work? As sure as the spell that changed you. Then goodbye, Rob, or Caroline. We will not see each other again. I watched as sail on the skiff caught the wind and headed out across the water. I felt a relief, but a sense of loss too. Even more, when Jamie returned several hours later. All went well? I asked. Yes, Jock Waddle is sending a ship to Antwerp next week, and Caroline will be on it. Anyway, Rob is out of our hands. I'm tempted to say, good riddance. Aye, maybe, but I like the girl, despite her obstinacy. I'll miss her though, one way or the other. Just the very next day, we had another visit from John Spence, and he expressed disappointment that Caroline had left. She was suddenly called home to Blackwall, I lied. I saw his face fall. However, John was adaptable. I saw him exchanging more than a few words with Jenny, so I imagined I would still be getting visits from him, but with a different focus. It was some weeks later when we saw a skiff come from the direction of Borystunus, and Jock got out at our dock. So our friend got off, Jamie began, but his voice tailed off at Jock's grim expression. Jock was shaking his head. Jamie, Isabel, I've got bad news. I think your lassie's gone. You see, we hit a storm just off Holland. A sail got loose, and we were struggling to get it fixed. Caroline tried to help as well, even though she was just a bit lassie, but then a wave washed over the boat and carried her off. She had disappeared before we could try to get her. I'm sorry. She's likely drowned. My hand went to my mouth, and my knees went weak. I began to cry. Jamie held me, while Jock looked on, a bit embarrassed. Jamie shook Jock's hand. We all knew the dangers. Thank you, old friend, for trying and letting us know. Jock stayed for an hour, giving us more details. He said his boat had actually been intercepted by a Navy frigate, but Caroline had not stirred any suspicions. He had given the excuse she was a Scots lassie, on her way to marry a Dutch fionk. At last, he looked over the waters to the low hills of the Lothians. Well, again, sorry for the bad news. I had to tell you, but it's now time I was getting back before it's dark. Rob, or Caroline, had given us problems, but she had become part of our lives. I remembered how her emotions had led her into adventure and danger, and how I had tried to help her to save her life. Now, her impulsiveness had destroyed her. Now, all of her was gone. I wrote a sad letter to our Dundee kin telling them what had happened, and sent it to them using a trusted courier. We got word back thanking us for the help and apologising for the stress and trouble Rob had caused us. Some months later, we actually went to visit them. The visit was a bit strained at first, but we all had lost someone dear to us, and we parted with our friendship restored. 35 years on, Jamie and I were still alive, in reasonable health, and we were now grandparents. We still lived at Culross, but our older son Alexander now ran the business, and our younger son Michael was living in Glasgow. He had set up a small shipping line bringing sugar from the West Indies. The cotton and tobacco trade with the American colonies had dried up with their independence, but was slowly picking up again. Jamie still liked to take some part in the business, sometimes to Alexander's frustration, but he was slowing down. I still occasionally thought of Caroline's death, but accidents and drownings were not uncommon. I had borne another 2 children, and I proudly watched them as they grew, matured and established their own lives. All of my girls were married and mothers themselves. I had discreetly read the spell to them, and they were all very pretty women and made good matches. The boys were fathers too, and Alexander lived near enough for me to fuss over my grandchildren. My youngest James had taken up work as a physician in Edinburgh. We now had a maid Christine to help us, the 5th in our married life. Our first maid, Jenny, had married John Spence and had taken easily and enthusiastically to her role as a laird's wife. One spring evening, we heard a knock at the door. We opened it to see our son Alexander with a woman standing by him. She was dressed in Dutch-style clothing. Her clothes looked good quality. "This lady has just got here in a wee boat. She was asking about you," he said. The woman looked as if she was in her 50s, but her figure still looked slim, her face unlined, and she stood straight. Her hair was dark, but showing a few silver threads. It was coiled elegantly above her head, emphasizing her long neck. I thought she was an attractive woman, even a beautiful one, despite her age. She did not look completely immaculate, however. Several hours on an open boat is not compatible with neatness, but there was a classiness about her style. When she saw us, she gave a smile and small curtsy. "How are you, Isabel and Jamie?" I detected her voice was basically Scots, but overlaid with a lot of Dutch accent. Then her grey eyes showed a trace of tears at their corners and her lips quivered. I stared at her, then gasped and screamed, held out my arms to her and embraced her as she came to me. Jamie gaped at her, then let her embrace him too. "Caroline, is it really you? I'm not seeing a ghost," I cried. I had to wipe my eyes. "No, alive and well." "We thought you were dead, drowned," cried Jamie. "Nearly, but I had the greatest good luck. You were washed overboard. What happened?" "Yes, I was, but somehow I must have caught a piece of plank or something. I don't remember, but I got washed up near The Hague, on the Dutch coast. More than half dead, I think. Some Dutch children found me and called their parents. They carried me to their house, dried me, fed me, cared for me, and called the town guard." To make a long story very short, the guard had a young officer who knew English, and I told him what had happened. Well, I didn't tell that I was changed. She added hastily. "They were first wondering about sending me back to Scotland, but, of course, I didn't want to do that, so he found me work with a trader. That was Jan van Buskirk. He traded a lot with England and Scotland, so I could help him with his letters and correspondence with him. Then again, to make another long story short, Jan had a son, and I fell in love with him and married him. You were right, Isabel. I had a woman's body. The mind took longer to adapt, but it did. I grew to love my new body and want a man in my life. I've made a good new life. I've 5 children back in Amsterdam, and I'm the wife of a shipping merchant. I am content. Except, over the years, I got to wondering more and more about Scotland and how you had helped me. So when Willem, that's my husband, said he had some cargo to go to Leith, I got a notion to cross back to Scotland, and especially to thank you. We hired a boatman to bring me here in a small boat. "Why did you not change back?" I asked. She shook her head. "Isabel, I kept the skin with the spell right next to my own skin so I wouldn't lose it, but when I went overboard I was totally soaked, of course. The Dutch family who found me took off my wet clothes to dry me and warm me up, and they washed my clothes too. Maybe they thought the skin was seaweed or debris or something, and they must have thrown it away. Anyway, I never found it. At the time, I didn't know enough Dutch to ask where it was, so I was stuck. I had to accept that I was irrevocably a woman. But you had said it would happen. Another 3 months, and I was happy as a girl, and began to think like one. When I met Willem, he was attracted to me, and I to him. Isabel, Jamie, I count myself as the luckiest of people. I know you didn't plan it that way, and neither did I at the time, but that spell has been wonderful for me. It has eventually led me to a happy life. Caroline? Jamie asked. I heard both your parents in Dundee have died, but did you ever try to contact your brothers or sisters? No, and I won't. That would lead to too many complications. I was my father's heir, but it's an old life, best forgotten. It was another person who ran off to war with romantic but foolish notions. You're not afraid to be back here in Scotland? She gave a slight shrug. Why should I be? As far as anyone knows, I am a respectable Dutch wife. She gave a rueful smile. I'm well disguised, don't you think? She ran her hands down her slim body in her smart clothes. Time has been good to me. Yes, the effects of the book too. I know I became a beautiful woman. Maybe I still am, if I can be so vain. You too, Isabel. You still have the book? No, I gave my own copy to my grandson Thomas's wife, Alison, and they now live in Leith. There's more business there. I think Culross is losing its importance. My son Alexander is talking about moving our business to Leith as well, and they want us to move too, but we're happy here. We've got too many ties here. Maybe in a year or two, though. Does Willem know your story? Jamie asked. No, and I wouldn't tell. He doesn't need to know. Your family is all well? They are, thank you. They're all doing well. Maybe I don't see them as much as I would like, though. Michael's in Glasgow. Alexander's the only one really close. These are now changed days in Scotland, I think? Caroline asked. Jamie nodded. Yes, it's like I thought would happen. The whole Highland clan system is about wiped out, and the Highlanders will never be a threat again. It's now a generation since the rebellion, and things are maybe relaxing too. Memories of the rebellion are fading, and there have been amnesties. There's even talk of making tartan legal again. A lot of Highlanders have moved into the lowlands for work, and a lot have emigrated across the Atlantic. Klansmen are now recruited into British Army regiments. They tell us Prince Charlie now lives in Rome, courtesy of the Pope. The French king kicked him out. He's a tired, spent force. Caroline gave a small grimace. To think that I was once caught up with him. What now? I asked. Is your husband with you? Yes, he's in Leith, but he's busy overseeing the ship getting unloaded. It has some Delftware in the cargo, and he wants to make sure they don't drop anything, and then the ship will have to be loaded properly again. He had seen I was a little homesick for Scotland, and actually, he was the one suggested I accompany him on this trip. I will not be back in Scotland again. I miss the hills, the lochs and things like the heather and the broom. She laughed. But there are tulips. I was born here, but my place is now with Willem and my family, and I'll go back with him to Amsterdam. We'll leave again in a week when the ship is loaded. It was too late to get back to Leith, so Caroline spent the night with us, reminiscing about the old times, and in the morning, we had a tearful embrace before she got on the little boat to take her back to Leith. Alexander would be a bit puzzled about who the strange woman was, and I would tell him, but he would have to keep it secret. The book had given rise to one more Burrows family secret.